Thank you for coming to our summer I3 lecture series. It's a pleasure to welcome Douglas Ljungkvist, whose name defies any spell check I have yet to meet. Every time I used your name, I was like, copy paste. I was so nervous I was going to get it wrong. As you can imagine, Douglas is originally from Sweden, and now he's a Brooklyn-based artist, and his personal work explores the vernacular beauty in the graphic, the colorful, and quiet. His work also explores mood and atmosphere with subtexts of time, memory, and identity. Douglas has earned numerous honors. I just chose a few from your website today, from PDN Photo Annual, Lens Culture, National Geographic, and the Lucy Awards. Of course, you can go to his website to see the huge list. All right? And we're thrilled to have you with us this evening. Your presentation actually comes at a perfect time because our students are working on creating a photo book, and I think they're realizing how much work it takes, right? And how many details are involved. So we're happy to have you here. Douglas has a few copies of his book that you can take a look at and also purchase, and I'm sure you'd be happy to sign them.
Absolutely.
Okay.
For sure.
All right, so with no further ado, help me welcome Douglas Ljungkvist.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that introduction. I felt like a prize fighter standing in the corner being introduced to the crowd. Thanks for not mentioning my weight. I think we know what weight class I'm in. Thank you all for coming. I'm very excited to be here. So many times I've sat on the other side where you guys are sitting now, wondering, what is this going to be like? So I'm very excited to be here. It's an honor. And do we have any students here tonight? All right, great. Well, what I wanted to do, I want to spend the bulk of the time speaking about a project called Ocean Beach, which, as Catherine mentioned, is a book that I published with Kehrer Verlag. How do you say it in German?
Kehrer Verlag.
Kehrer Verlag. I thought so. I didn't dare to do it in German. Right. It's funny, my wife is fluent in German, and she speaks Swedish with a perfect German accent. I always give her a hard time for that. So I'll be talking about the book. I'll be talking about that project, how it came about. There were a lot of challenges. And I think, especially for you guys in school, it will show you the adaptability it takes to do a long-term project and put it together as a book. And towards the end, I'll talk a little bit about how I found the publisher and how we actually managed to get the book published and come out as well. So hopefully that will be helpful. And then I'll be glad to, of course, take some questions as well. But before that, we should probably do a little background, right? Yeah. I'm not that well known yet. And the name Ljungkvist, it's one of those that people can't say it, but they will remember it. Oh yeah, you're the guy with that name. Are you related to Henrik Lundqvist, the Rangers hockey goalie? No. Even though I'm a twin, and he has a twin brother. But if I had arrived at Ellis Island, chances are I would be spelling my last name today the same as Henrik does. L-U-N-D instead of L-J-U-N-G. But if you imagine the L being silent, that's it. Ljungkvist. Not too bad. Ljungkvist. I actually worked in the airline business once upon a time, and then you had to stand and wait to the end to travel standby, and they would call up your name. And whenever I heard a name that somebody couldn't say, I knew it was me. And once in San Francisco, I was really tired. I was hoping, please let me get on this flight. I just want to get home. And I heard the gentleman call Douglas, and then it was just quiet. and then after that, he goes, L-J-U-N-G. He started spelling out the name. So I thought, photographer, tricky name. Should I change it? Should I have an artist name? No, that's not me. I'm sticking with what I got. But let's talk a little background. I am from Sweden. This is correct. That's my last class photo. It may be the last photograph of me with some kind of hair, okay? And on a humid day like today, it would have been even bigger than that. This is from 1980. And to the right of me is my twin sister, who is actually a very well-known commercial illustrator and has published, I think, 8 or 9 children's books as well. So she was always the artist, not me. I was the athlete, and then I became the business person. I lived in Gothenburg, which is on the west coast of Sweden, from age birth to 15. When I was 15, I moved to Stockholm. And then I moved to New York when I was 25. Now, I shouldn't maybe say this because you guys are all students, but I left school after 9th grade. Wasn't my thing, really. I was more pragmatic. I was kind of didn't really enjoy school. They hadn't really defined learning disabilities at that point. It was kind of teach everyone the same thing, so it was hard for me to focus and kind of enjoy it, but it was fun because all my friends were there and there were a lot of girls there and we played soccer, so it wasn't that bad. But after 9th grade, we moved to Stockholm and I said, I think that's enough for me. So I actually started working in my mother's company. She had a company in the airline business in Sweden, and I kind of grew up pretty early and pretty fast and really enjoyed that. We have some more visitors. Greetings, salutations, welcome. So I moved to New York, and I was only going to actually be in New York for 1 year. I needed to get out of a bad relationship, and I figured, why not go to New York? My father is American. I had met him once, actually, but I had a U.S. citizenship, so it made it easier. So I decided, I'm going to go to New York for a year. I worked in the restaurant business. I waited tables. I was pretty happy. I was making decent money. And I remember walking out of the YMCA. That was my first home, actually, for a month on Broadway. And standing on Broadway, looking around, knowing one person out of 8.5 million. And I loved that feeling. It was such a feeling of liberation. And I guess I extended my stay with 24 more years? This is my 25th year here in New York now. So next January, I actually will have lived half my life here and half my life in Sweden. Now, I didn't always photograph. I actually worked in sales and marketing most of my life in the travel industry. And I only started photographing at age 40. I know what you're thinking. I'm 39 or 41 maybe. But I'll be 49 soon, here in June, actually, in a couple of weeks. I started at 40, and I just got hit. I totally fell in love with this whole notion of photographing. I was living in New Jersey. John is visiting today from New Jersey, from Asbury Park. I lived in North Jersey for a dozen years, actually, and that's what will lead me down to Ocean Beach later on in the presentation. And yeah, I got hit right away. When I moved to Brooklyn, I really started getting interested in photography, and Brooklyn kind of became my muse, I have to say. Hey guys, hello. Come on in. Thanks for coming. Yeah, so now I've been photographed for almost 9 years, and I have to say the first 5 years were not very good. I was finding my voice. I was trying to figure out what type of photographer should I be. You know, I looked at documentary, I looked at photojournalism, things like I looked at sports photography because I love sports, but then I realized that for what I photograph, it could only really be fine art. I don't love the expression, but personal photography. It's self-expression for me mostly. So that's what I kind of focused on. So I think starting 2010 is really when I started coming into my own, developing my voice, started to develop multiple projects as well. I was actually going to speak and show you work from 4 projects today, but I talked too much, so we only get 2. The rest will be for another time. I have one backup just in case. We'll see. Okay, so I'm mostly self-taught. Again, the pragmatic person that I am. I did take a few classes at ICP here and there, and I started actually in a small school called Manhattan Photo, I think they're called, or Photo Manhattan, and that's where I kind of got hooked on it. That's my family, who I live with now in Brooklyn. That's my wife, Erica, and that's my little daughter, Ebba, who keeps me insane. She's 2.5 years old. So basically, when I'm not photographing, getting paid, I'm taking care of Ebba because my wife is a preschool teacher. So life has been pretty hectic, and you know, I'm pushing 50, but it's all good. It's all good. This is the view from where I used to work. This is what my life was like pretty much from the age of 16 when I started working to when I stopped working in the corporate world in 2008. Cubicles, office landscapes, you would get really excited if you got a corner office, even if it wasn't, private and whatnot. And it was all I knew, and I was good at it, and I enjoyed it, and especially in the travel industry. If there's one thing that I love as much, and maybe even more, and could never live without, it's travel. Before me, my mother worked in the travel business for 30 years, so I have traveled extensively from a very, very young age. So it was all normal to me. Like I said, most of the sales and marketing jobs with Scandinavian Airlines for 10 years. I worked for Lufthansa German Airlines. I worked for Avis Rent-A-Car. I didn't sell used cars, though. You can trust me. I did all the international e-commerce and marketing, which was a great job because I did it from home in Brooklyn. And the head office was in, those hands get in the way. The head office was in Parsippany, New Jersey. And I'd only have to go like 3 times a year to see my boss. I pretty much ran my own company, which was fantastic. But that's when I started getting more and more interested in photography. So I will show you photographs, I promise. But first, I want to talk about why I photograph, because I think we talk so much about how we photograph and why we photograph, or where we photograph, but not always why. And I'm an extremely analytical person, and through a lot of soul searching, I try to understand my own work and what it means below the surface. So the first thing is I have an extreme need for solitude. I need to be alone. I need quietness, but at the same time, I hate nature. I'm not a living in the country kind of guy. I'm an urban rat. I lived in cities my whole life. That's where I feel at home. But I love these post-apocalyptic movies where people go out and the streets are empty and there's no people anywhere. I love that kind of stuff. So I kind of seek out those kind of environments where it kind of feels like that. And that's usually around the industrial areas in Brooklyn on Sunday afternoons where I can get that. So that's really important to me. The other thing is, I have OCD. I don't wash my hands a million times a day. That's one part of OCD. My OCD is I'm obsessive compulsive disorder. I'm obsessed with numbers. I'm obsessed with numbers and routines. And with that, it's extremely time consuming what I do. I count everything. For example, I love movies, and I will be talking about movies several times tonight. You'll hear me referencing movies. It's by far my biggest inspiration. I can watch movies over and over, and I catch new things all the time because I never catch usually more than 75% of the dialogue because I'm counting syllables in sentences, okay? Especially one-liners. I can't watch movies with like Arnold Schwarzenegger because it's all one-liners. I'd be exhausted. Or Clint Eastwood, can't do it. Even numbers are good in my world, and odd numbers are bad. So if I count syllables and I come up with an odd number, I add a word to the dialogue. This all goes on in my head, by the way. I don't do it out loud, trust me. Nobody really knows. Except that it looks like, what's that guy doing? Is he paying attention? So my wife can ask me after a movie, like, what do you think of the movie? Oh, I like the way it felt. I'm more into how did it feel, the mood, the atmosphere. But the dialogue, I miss a lot of it. There's no doubt about that. As far as routines, I always have to go with my left foot first. Downstairs, I always have to finish with my left foot. It's not a big deal, except when you walk in a rush hour in Manhattan, you got 600 people behind you, and you start stutter stepping. It creates a little bit of a backup sometimes. And people are wondering again, what are you doing, dude? ADD, I'm not hyper. Trust me, I'm one of the laziest people I know, give it a chance. But ADD to the point where I have a very hard time focusing on one thing at a time. I get sidetracked very easily, and some people have said it's exhausting having a conversation with me because I will speak a half sentence, then I open a parenthesis or a comma, and I go off to something else, and then I go out there to something. So I can have 3, 4 sentences and ideas open at the same time. And if someone can't keep pace with that, that can be tough. And I don't always close all the sentences either. Half the time I forget what I was really saying. So let's see if that happens tonight. I got to try and be disciplined, actually. In the business world, it was actually good for me to have some ADD because I could multitask. I could take on a lot of different tasks. The bad thing was I was a horrible implementer. So that was a challenge for me. Well, so how does photography fit into this? Well, strangely enough, as technical as photography can be, photography, when I photograph, it's the only time my brain is off. Now, I golfed for 10 years, and you have two types of golfers. You have technical golfers who are like this, and you have field golfers who don't think at all hard. They just pick up the club and just hit the ball, and they don't think. I overthink and overanalyze. But with photography, I don't know why. It's all instinct, it's all gut, and my brain is turned off. And it's the only time it's turned off except when I'm sleeping. So it's therapeutic for me, really therapeutic. So it's a very, very big part of, should have the ADD up there. It's definitely in play, trust me. So it's very therapeutic. But now I want to show you some work. But I wanted to get that kind of out there and see if you can kind of feel it. What I've forced myself to do to really take my work to the next level is I kind of, when I work from a process perspective, I will do what my gut and instinct tells me. And then I almost have to pinch myself to say, okay, now do this. And that's a process that's usually the same. It usually includes me walking backwards, further away from the subject matter, changing the composition, sometimes layering with different foreground subject, things of that nature. But I have to kind of remind myself. It's not that I work fast, really. I'm very picky with my compositions and with light, and I take my time, but like I said, it's mostly instinct and gut. And sometimes those are the best photos, but sometimes they're not. So I have to put more into it, but I have to remind myself. Many times I put my camera down, I'm ready to go on, and I realize that no, you're not finished here yet. So it's a constant reminder. But I'm so thankful that it's the one time my brain is quiet, and I don't know why. Photography could be the thing that you can really overanalyze and overthink, but for some reason, I don't. Okay, so let's look at some work. This work is in Brooklyn. Right now it's just called In Brooklyn. It's mostly from 2010 until today. And I wanted to show you an urban project in addition to Ocean Beach. Because if somebody asked me what type of photographer I am, I'd probably say I'm an urban landscape photographer. If someone asks me the short version of what do you photograph, I usually say urban vernacular beauty. Everything that I photograph is beauty to me. It's the way I see beauty. It's what makes it very personal. I don't photograph things that are interesting per se. They all kind of usually roll up to vernacular beauty for me. So this project is a combination actually of urban landscape photography and street photography. And my process, despite all my OCD and ADD, I am a completely intuitive photographer. I never know where I'm going. I never know what I will find till I see it. I don't know when I go out what I will photograph. I don't have a shot list, anything of that nature. Completely intuitive. You may see me drive around my black scooter in Brooklyn, looking for things, feeling like I'm hunting things. That's how I work, very, very intuitive. But this photo is interesting because there's three things here that you would very seldom see in my photographs. People, cars, and trees. I don't like trees. I don't like green trees. I feel they're too dominant. So where I photograph a lot of these type of environments. These are, you can call them a warehouse district, you can call them an industrial area, Sunset Park, East Williamsburg, Red Hook, Gowanus, et cetera, et cetera. It's fringe neighborhoods, and what I love so much about these on Sunday afternoons is that all the businesses are closed. So unless you have any business there, you rarely see people. When I started going here to these areas in Brooklyn, even in Williamsburg, down by the water now, where you have, the high rises and Dunkin' Donuts and all this stuff, right? Those lots were empty. I used to have nunchucks. Do you know what nunchucks are? I used to have nunchucks stuck in the back of my pants and pepper spray. because there were no people there. And the people that I saw made me scared sometimes. So I knew that at least I have some kind of chance to defend myself if something happens. Now I kind of have to fight for elbow rooms from all the fashion shoots that are going on there. It's changed so much. But that's where I like spending time. These kind of trees I like. A lot of my work has a melancholy to it. These little, naked, industrial-sized trees feel very melancholy to me. Throw in a little rain here and it could be like Paris, 1950s, New Wave movie. Like I said, I'll be talking more about movies. It's a big inspiration for me. What I look for when I go around, I look for locations, and these locations I call a scene. And a scene kind of goes into my brain's Rolodex. And I use that as a backdrop. Basically, I use it as an outside studio. The process that I have as an urban landscape photographer is I don't follow the action to Times Square. I don't follow where there's a lot of people and react. I work the opposite way. I'm proactive. I find the scene first. I set up. I have my lighting set up. I have my aperture. I know exactly what I want. And then I wait for things to happen. And they don't always happen. But here I've been trying, I love these two squares on the wall. And for the longest time I've been trying to get people in them, to frame them there. And also the Hasidic Jewish people are very difficult to photograph in general. So it took me probably 3 years stopping at this location to get this one photograph, but it felt really good. And if it's one thing that photography really has taught me that I didn't have much of at all, it's persistence, to keep trying, going back to places over and over, and patience. When I started, I didn't know why it took 6 months to do a project or 4 years to do a project. I didn't understand that. I thought, why can't I do it in a weekend? I shoot fast, I shoot a lot, why can't I do it faster? So now I know. This is very typical of me. The colors look a little bit different here than on my computer because we probably calibrate differently, but it's close enough where you see that a lot of my work is really a formalist study as well. It's about form, it's about space, and it's about color. 3 very important things to my work. This was one of those situations where I was set up. I always loved how this intersection feels. It reminds me of an Italian neorealism movie from the 50s. There's no cars, there's no people, there's no trees. You're not sure if this is coming up or coming down. You're not sure of the timestamp. And this woman walks by. She looks to be in hospital scrubs, right? She's got curlers in her hair, and I think she's wearing slippers. And thank you. Thanks for being there. I like the photograph just as an urban landscape photograph, but I was prepared. I had my lighting. I knew everything. I was just standing with my camera waiting for something. And I can stay at a location for 2 hours and take dozens of photos, and it's seldom that I get even one that really works. But when you do, it can be pretty cool. So that's my process. It's based on patience and waiting, as opposed to following the action and reacting to what you actually see. And again, I do like that post-apocalyptic kind of feeling that when you do see somebody, you wonder, like, well, why is this person wandering around here? That's kind of weird. So what I do is, as I mentioned, I go back to places over and over. I look for things that are new. I look for things that are temporary. This is the case of the bottom of the Brooklyn Bridge, which was under renovation. And it will never look like that again. Plus, this steel was just so beautiful in this particular light, and blowing out the sky, and together with the gray of the garage, it just kind of came together really nice. And I like the temporariness of scenes that you know are going to change and are going to look different. So that's something, and a reason I keep going back to places over and over to look for that. People often ask me, why don't you shoot in Park Slope where you live? It's beautiful. It's too beautiful. It's too beautiful for my taste. It's ornate. There's people, cars, and trees. And it's beautiful brownstones. and it doesn't work for me. This is from Williamsburg. I think it's from the Williamsburg Bridge. And I need that urban edge and grittiness. I'm a little obsessed with the 70s, in addition to movies. Everything 70s. So I like when I find things that feels like it's either stuck in time or in the 70s or possibly in the 80s as well. This is really funny. I like the photo a lot, but I got an email yesterday, I swear to God, yesterday, out of nowhere from a gentleman I don't know, saying, hey, you don't know me, but I found your photographs online, and I am in this photograph. I'm the guy in the doorway drinking. And I was like, are you kidding me? And the guy's a photographer. I mean, what are the odds, right? So I thought that was really funny. And this photograph is from, I think it's from 2010, actually. The in Brooklyn work is probably about 75% completed. It's a very slow growing project. I have a project within Brooklyn that is more about vintage cars like this. This, though, will probably belong in Brooklyn because it has a person in it. But as you may see with my work, it's graphic, color's important, but I very much like symmetry because I have the little boy in the orange shirt on the right. I love how there's this around the corner here. Which is basically following, without knowing it, sign on the left. I love, if I have a vertical thing on the right, I like to have something to match it with on the left. It's not necessary. And again, I don't think about these things. I see them or think of them weeks or months later when I look at work. So it's mostly intuitive, but I guess with time, those 5 years, really allowed me to develop a voice that was just natural for me. And I think a lot of that stems back to my childhood and growing up in Sweden, where it's a country obsessed with design, but design that is functional and design that is minimally invasive as well. So when you live with that for 25 years, you're obviously going to get a taste for it, and it's going to be in the back of your head and how you see things and whatnot. So this is very typical for a photo like that. And it gives you a little taste of my urban cars project. It's a collection of cars like these, mostly the 70s, mostly American muscle. They can't be mint condition. It doesn't interest me at all. They have to show scars of history. They have to show things missing. I love when they have a different colored door panel or something like that. And it will, I think I have a collection of over 300, and it will probably be my second monograph probably next fall. So it's a really exciting project. It used to be that I would go to these scenes and locations, do the urban landscape, and then find the cars. Now it's the other way around. Now I drive around on my Vespa, and I perfected this 1 second stare. On my scooter down the street, I'm driving, and I'm looking for a second, and I'm looking for a second. I'm looking down the side streets. I'm looking for unusually large shapes. So I'm looking for form. I'm looking for unusual colors, because the color palette of the 70s, you don't see that in today's cars. They're black, white, red, and silver, and metallic and whatnot. So I perfected this system by just looking down these side streets on my Vespa a second at a time, making sure there's no potholes in front of me. And it's been pretty successful, actually, I have to say. Now, let's talk a little bit about inspirations. Just see how we're doing with time. Okay. Geography, very important. I talked about travel, how important that is to me and has been. I'm very interested in how and where we live as a people. Not so much in the people, more about the places. People come and go, but places don't. Places change, but they kind of remain the same. So places is where my bodies of work start. Brooklyn, Ocean Beach, Middletown, USA, and some other ideas that I have long term as well. Same thing about places. So that's very, very important to me. History. I mean, these were my two favorite subjects in school, except for gymnastics, of course, where I got to play floorball and ping pong and all these fun things. Geography and history, I loved them in school. I was actually good at them. I'm still extremely interested in history, mostly post-World War II, actually World War II a lot as well. The Cold War, I'm very, very interested in. Again, with movies, I love spy movies, Berlin Wall, all that kind of stuff. Fantastic. So history and geography, very, very important to me. The other thing is color. Color is very important. I'm going to tell you a little quick story. I'm going to try and do this quick. I had a review with Sasha Wolf, she's a gallerist, in 2010. It's one of my first reviews. And Sasha she can be intimidating, okay? So she asked me when we're sitting down, we're going through some prints, and she says, so, how important is color to you? Well, not really that important. I'm more interested in, this and this and that and the other. Well, it should be. Huh? What? She totally interrupted me and said, well, it should be. What do you mean? Why? Because you have a great eye for color. Okay, but that's a good thing, right? Yeah, it's a good thing, but you don't even know it. Okay, do I have to know it? No. But if you want to advance your photography and become a really good photographer, if you start paying attention to that, it's going to bring you to a different level. And boy, was she right. I mean, things like that, conversation like that somebody can point out the obvious that I can't see in my own work. At that point, I wasn't understanding enough of my work at the time. Color for me was subconscious. Yes, I did have a good sense of color, I guess, but it was subconscious. I didn't think about it. And it really does go back to my childhood as well. I'll talk more about that later, but very, very important. So once I started really bringing the color interest to the foreground and thinking about it and looking for it, it really did elevate my work. And it also helped the timing. It was right when I started photographing at Ocean Beach in 2010. And that whole first part of the book and the project, color plays a very important part. So the timing was perfect. So I always credit Sasha that she helped bring the color out in me. Form, very, very important too. What I mean with form is, there's a lot of time this discussion, what's more important, form or content. It's always nice to have a combination of both, but for me, form always comes first for me. How something looks and feels to me in my work is much more important than what it depicts. So you can depict something really important, but if it doesn't look the way I want it to, it doesn't work for me, which means I'll never be a photojournalist and not really probably documentary photographer either. But how something looks and feels, very, very important to me. The other thing is memory. You start getting older. I've recognized a lot of memories photographing at Ocean Beach that goes back to my childhood, things of that nature, and perceived memories. Now, that's something that kind of happened the last 5 years. I've been walking down the street in Toronto, beautiful neighborhood, and I see down one street there's this kind of brutalist, dark gray, depressing, it's not even a project, but the one thing that struck me was Belfast. That's the only thing that came into my head, Belfast. I grew up in Sweden in the late 70s, early 80s when the IRA was very active. There were all these bombings, and Belfast was on the news every other day. You form these perceptions. You form these memories, but a lot of them are perceived memories. They're not your memories, they're secondhand. A lot of them are created by media, by looking at photographs, looking at TV, etc. So I run into that more and more, these perceived memories. Another thing too is with memories, I mentioned color. Growing up in Sweden, it's an extremely homogeneous society. You do not want to stick out. You want to look like everybody else. You want to conform. And when I grew up, everybody wore these kind of shirts, with the crocodile, the Lacoste shirts, right? Then there was a type of V-necked wool sweater with an eagle. It's called Leyland Scott. Lacoste is actually tennis gear. Leyland Scott is golf gear. These are very expensive clothing materials. But everybody kind of had the same shoes, the same down jacket. It was like a national uniform. And if you didn't have the real thing, you had a knockoff from H&M. But everybody had them. And I remember guys that I went to school with that I do not know what their names are today, but I know what color shoes they wore. I remember this guy used to wear a maroon colored Lacoste shirt. I have no idea what his name is, not a clue. So these memories with color, I always kind of wore like navy blue. I was kind of in the middle of the road, but the flashier the color, the higher up in the hierarchy you were within your group of people. The guys that were kind of the leaders would wear green and orange and yellow, and the others would wear blue and red. And it's really interesting. I started analyzing, thinking about this the last couple of years, and it's kind of fascinating. Movies, love everything, but I already mentioned Italian neorealism, fantastic. If you want to see a great movie director who could be or should have been a photographer, Antonioni, he's an Italian director. He's a little bit after neorealism and in color, but very long shots where the camera doesn't move, and he photographs a lot of the industrial kind of revolution and relationship between industry and man in Italy in the 60s. Fascinating if you like photography, definitely. But for me, movies is, you know, people may think it's, cinematography like The Third Man, which I think is the most perfect movie ever made, but cinematography is kind of second to me. It's the overall art direction. It is the location and mood that makes it for me. I love 40s movies, you know, when they're in New York, they're in an office somewhere, and you can see the skyline outside the window. And you know it's an illustration, but I love the way those illustrations look. So when I can find a scene in the real world that looks like that, I get really excited. Now, let's go to Ocean Beach. Does anyone know Ocean Beach? Except you, John. John is from Asbury Park. Asbury Park. Okay, so Ocean Beach is a place that I used to visit in the 90s. I lived in New Jersey, don't tell anyone, 12 years. I had a girlfriend who lived close to down the shore, and she wanted us to take a vacation there, down the shore. And she took me down to Ocean Beach, and I guess you could say I wasn't that impressed. I'll show you soon. It's rows and rows of cottages. I thought it was a work camp for delinquent youth or something, the first time I saw it. And we both worked in the airline business, so I said, we can go to Bermuda, we can go to Rio, we can go anywhere we want. Why do you want to go here? Well, my parents have always done it, and we love it, and I think you would like it. I was very skeptical, let me tell you. Now, it's an easy access because I have this project called Middletown where I photograph 16 towns named Middletown all over the country in 16 states, so it's not so easy access. Brooklyn is almost too easy access. This is somewhere in between. It takes me about 2 hours from Brooklyn, about an hour once I get outside the Lincoln Tunnel. So a lot of the time, I get a zip car from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. I drive down, start working at 9, and at 6 o'clock, I drive back home again. Sometimes I stay over, so it's easy access for me. This is what it looks like. It's a little thin barrier island, and it was created in the mid-1940s. Has 3 sections, took 20 years to develop. It was really made as an affordable vacation option for working class families. So these little cottages started at $2,095. There was no insulation, there was no air conditioning. They were very utilitarian and sparse, but on a great piece of land really close to the ocean. Unit 3, as you see there, is where I've done, I think every photograph in the book except maybe 1 or 2 is from there. And what I like about Unit 3 is that all the streets are made of sand. And the other units still have paved roads, which is probably nice when you live there actually, but I love the feel and the way it looks when you have sand instead of pavement. It's really, really nice. These were historically, again, history for me, very important. Historically built almost exactly the same time as Levittown, which has been called America's first mass-produced modern suburb on Long Island in the mid-40s. Very similar principles, building mass-produced, few options, very quickly, and very affordably as well. This is what I kind of encountered the first time. This is standing, looking north. And I started going back. Last time I had vacation there, I think, was in 1999. And in 2009, I wanted something outside Brooklyn, but close to home. I remember this place, and I figured somebody must have photographed this. It's just too great of a place. But I couldn't find any information that anyone had. So I went down, did some scouting, started shooting in late 2009, and I just love the work process here too. I go up and down these streets just looking for things that feel right, that I like how it looks and how it feels. And again, this is Unit 3, Streets Are Made of Sand. I've always loved repeated patterns, no matter what it is. And in this case, when you look at it from a high level or from the street, all the houses look the same. But when you get close, the major differentiator are the colors. It's what differentiates it. So it's kind of individuality amongst conformity is what the color helps set here. So this is the place that I agreed to vacation to, and I fell in love with the place. I've been back several times. This is the cover of the book. That's called Ocean Beach. And we actually had 3 different covers. We had 2 other covers, both of which I really liked. And then we redid the size of the book, and the publisher suggested this, and I was like, duh. I mean, yeah, everything is here that we need, Ocean Beach, except the ocean and the beach. But the ocean and the beach were not in the project to begin with. This was about the architectural landscape. But what happened after a while was, and again, very similar to my Brooklyn work, color, form, and space. Those 3 matters. But after a while, I wanted to get inside the cottages because I knew that's where the real gold is. When I used to go there in the 90s, it's just wood paneling, pink bathrooms, really crazy colors, and I wanted that. So I asked them for permission to photograph, and I was surprised that they said yes, actually. I also made some strategic visual decisions. Again, even though I'm intuitive, I knew very much what I wanted this finished project to look like. And I wanted to shoot it more high key than I had in the past. At the time, 2009, my work probably looked more like Alex Webb. It was much darker, it was much more contrast, and the colors were much poppier. I wanted this to have a lot more white in the colors and to be more high key. I wanted the light to be different too. I wanted it to be more diffused. If not white skies, I didn't want bright blue skies. So I would always look at the weather forecast before I would go down and see if it was to my liking. Half the time they were wrong anyway. But it was really important to me that it would end up looking the way I wanted it to. This is the only night photo. But I started thinking about what Harvey Stein said to me once in a class I took with him. When the project started growing, I was like, what do I do with it now? Because by now I'm photographing inside as well. And he said, you have to surround the subject matter. Surround it, photograph a different perspective, different light, different times of year, all this kind of thing. So I knew I needed variety. So I knew I needed at least one night photo. And this is the only night photo, actually. And it looks kind of inviting. There's nobody in the cottage. I'm not even sure why the light's on. It's a February evening. I think it's like 18 degrees and really, really windy. And I'm freezing my ass off, I'll be honest with you. I'm glad the photo came out the way it did because it was not pleasant photographing it. But this cottage too on the right, I really love that. And to show a little bit of what I did to get that variety and has such a unique shape compared to the other ones. It actually does appear twice in the book. On the left here, completely different light. This is kind of my favorite light that I had not enough times down there, but quite a few. Morning fog that would burn off, and where you can kind of sense the sun, but it doesn't create any shadows. Kind of like a thin cloud cover, early in the morning. My favorite conditions down there to work in. And then we have dolphins. swimming in the snow. That allowed me to actually document the time of year. The dolphins in the snow, we know it's winter. And it's very seldom at this part down the shore that they get snow as much as they did that actually stays as long as it did. There's another photograph in the book that documents a very similar cottage, but all daffodils in front. So we know it's Easter time, yellow daffodils. So that's kind of how I try to communicate. There's a cottage interior that has a, what do you call a pumpkin for Halloween. For some reason, people change the cottages for the season. It's like they dress them up, and it's for people that go look at them in the off season to see if they want to rent them. So of course I took some advantage of those opportunities. But this is what I remembered from Ocean Beach when I started photographing the interiors. Wood paneling, crazy colors, wall-to-wall who has wall-to-wall carpeting down the shore where it's sand everywhere? The streets are made of sand. It's impossible to get rid of. But these were stuck in time, you know. This would have, you know, a green bathtub and, you know, a pink sink, and oh, I loved it. But when I started going back 10 years later, they were almost all gone because that generation had passed these on to their kids. These are rented on a weekly basis, so it's a very competitive rental market. What happens is somebody on your block starts putting in white sheetrock walls, some flat screen TVs, there's a Wi-Fi network, there is central air conditioning and a washer dryer, and everybody wants it. So when I started going around looking, I was so disappointed at first. But what I would do is I would look on the agency's website for the slightest indication of being stuck in time. It could be a curtain, it could be a bedspread, something as little as that. And I would write down the numbers, and I would go down and I would start shooting exteriors, and if and when the light turned bad, I'd go to the agency and say, hey, here's a list of the ones that I'd like to shoot this afternoon if I can. And they would give me the keys, and I would go look at them and kind of evaluate them and see if they had the kind of stuff that I was looking for. So this is one of my early favorites. Unfortunately, not many left like that. But this isn't bad either. I mean, I love this. Triple blue. Yeah, it's a little brighter here than it should be. But the way I wanted to shoot the interiors too, I wanted to shoot them pretty evenly lit. The rooms are so small that when I would photograph a bedroom like this, I'm in the other room or in the hallway outside. I'm not in the room, they're so tiny. All the interiors are shot on a tripod. I love the window size. For some reason, none of the windows, regardless of the size, fits an air conditioner. So they all have air conditioning, but they're all jammed into the wall somehow. I don't know how they figured this out. Supposedly someone told me when they built this originally, before they really had air conditioners in the 40s, they claimed they built it in a way that if everybody opened their windows front and back, that the wind would go all the way from the ocean through every cottage all the way down to Route 35. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but that was the intention. So I think that's why. And then when air conditioners came, they just didn't update the windows. Something else that really fascinated me with these cottages now, whether they were old or new, was there's very little art, there's very few personal items. We don't know who the owners are. And we don't know what the timeline is. We don't know when this photograph is made. And I love that. I love photographs with more questions than answers, where the viewer has to make up their own ideas and own opinions and suggestions. Because I'm not looking to educate or teach somebody here. So I really like that. But what I started doing, as you can see, this is so empty. I started adding a conceptual layer to the project. And I did that about 2/3 of the way in by adding some personal items of mine into these cottages. So the tennis racket there, that's my tennis racket. It's a tennis racket I played with from the age of probably 10 to 14. I lost it, you know. I lived in 23 places in my life, so eventually you lose these things. But I bought it at the Brooklyn flea market. I picked it up, like 15 bucks. And I wanted to create these fragmented self-portraits. I wanted to explore what would it look like had I grown up here as a child, spending my summers at Ocean Beach? So I started looking for things that I could populate these cottages with. If you look at the book, the vast majority of cottage interiors are not staged. There's only a few. It was a lot of trial and error. Most of them didn't work. Some of them did. But I kind of liked how it turned out. And also the bunk beds. Me and my sister, we had twin bunk beds. Me and my twin sister, we had bunk beds. So that was kind of perfect as well. So it started with that nobody would know these things were mine or what they represented from my life and my childhood unless they would know me really, really well. And I kind of liked the idea of that. This is also one of my favorite photographs because it actually shows the outside. It's one of the few that it doesn't have not only shades, but it has no curtains either. So I could actually focus both on the outside and the inside and get the light to be pretty much the same. But if you see the suitcase, that's the kind of suitcase I would have had in 1978, for example. We had several of those when we were kids growing up. And it was a lot of work getting the suitcase right. I had it closed and locked. I had it open. I had it locked. I had it with things in it. I tried a lot of different things, and this is what worked. So it wasn't just a matter, oh, let me put a suitcase there and open the locks. It was a lot of trial and error. And like I said, most of it didn't work, but when it did, I think it works pretty well, actually. And when I would show in reviews, I would show these to people, I would never tell them that. I would wait for them to be like, to say something like, I don't like that, or why is that there, or whose is that? And no one did. And I kind of felt that I think I can kind of get away with this, and that it kind of works. And when I did tell people afterwards, people actually rather liked it, the fact that I injected some of myself into this. I also always had, I don't know why, but a fascination with really small spaces. We had even smaller spaces when we were kids in Sweden growing up. We would rent, we had a single mother, we did not have a lot of money. So often we would rent a small cottage on somebody else's piece of land who had a bigger house, like a guest house almost. And these were very small, very similar to this in size and smaller. So I was used to that. And in Sweden, most people actually have a summer house, but we didn't. So I have in my work statement a sentence that talks about the size of these, and it says something to the fact that it straddles the line between intimate and claustrophobic. And it's really what it does. There's one bedroom. I didn't photograph because I didn't like the way it looked, but you can lay in bed, and if you roll over to the right, you can change the fuse over here. Mm-hmm. And if you roll over to the left, you're opening your closet and taking your clothes out. Mm-hmm. And you're not even leaving the bed. So that's intimate and it's claustrophobic. I would be perfectly happy living in a trailer, living in a boat, anything, an RV, small confined spaces, love it, would love it. My wife hates me when I start talking about these things, especially now with a daughter. So I think it's out of the question for now. A couple of more photos before we get to the other part. This is from my favorite cottage. This cottage was so bad that the rental agency would not rent it out unless you physically came and looked at it and signed a release form that, yeah, I'll rent this. Because they had rented it online to people and they had nothing but complaints. It was pretty bad, but I'm a photographer. For me, it's a gold mine. So this is the only cottage that has more than one photograph in the book. It has 3. So this blue bathroom is one of them. And this wonderful setup. I think Eggleston may have enjoyed this as well if he was there. So I was very, very thankful for that. Unfortunately, this was completely ruined by Sandy, completely. It stands on the bayside, and it is now completely gone. So I don't know what they will build instead. So this is how the book started. At this point, I have a publisher. I started doing blurb dummy books, and I would send an electronic link to about 10 publishers that I had picked that I felt do similar types of book that may be interested in publishing this. And I started doing that about halfway through the project. And Kehrer was the only one. There was an Italian publisher, Charta, who wanted to publish it. I didn't like the deal, I didn't like the vibe. Plus the project wasn't mature enough, I felt, so I said, thanks, let's wait, see what happens. Now they're gone, they're out of business. But Kehrer was the one that always came back with feedback. They always were positive. They said, hey, I like the way this looks. Yeah, this looks good. Keep going. You should maybe do this, maybe do that. And I asked them, do you think it's something you would want to publish? And they said, well, let me talk to the owner. And they came back and said, not at this point the way it looks right now, but let's wait and see. So I waited and took my time and kept working at the project and got back to them again. And this is, again, all before Sandy, and sent them a link. And their acquisitions director was going to be in Toronto doing the Contact Festival. So I went up there to do a review with her. And I showed her prints, and she loved it. It made such a difference for her seeing prints as opposed to on the computer screen. And she said after the review that I want to publish this. She said, it's not up to me, it's up to the owner and the boss, but I'm going to pitch this and sell it. And shortly after, we were in business. So for anyone, for you guys, students, thinking about a book, you know, a mock-up is a really good idea, trying to really know who the publishers are out there. Now you have also the self-publishing option. You have the indie publishers out there, so there's a lot more variety. I wanted to work with a traditional publisher because my work is more rooted in 70s photography, and I'm a decent editor, but these guys make books for a living, and they make beautiful books. They know how to edit, how to sequence, how to lay it out, size, all these things. I gave them a big batch of files and said, pick from these, but these 40 have to be in the book, and edit them, sequence them, do what you want, and let me know. And after we got the spreads together that were important to me, their right position in the book, I think I kept 80, maybe 85% of their suggestions actually that I went with. So they did a fantastic job. My job was to photograph, and I did that. So I was really happy working with professionals. Some people, self-publishing is great, it's not for me. I would rather have other people do it for me who are experts at what they do. But it's definitely a great opportunity now to be able to publish books independently and much more affordably, no doubt about that. So that's a little bit how about the book came about. We were going to publish this in the spring of 2013, but then Sandy happened in the fall of 2012, and this was kind of what it looked like. Ocean Beach was actually not hit as hard as some other places. It was right between two epicenters, Ortley Beach and Manahawkin. Manahawkin is 6,000 square foot mansions. We're talking Hampton style. They were just washed away like monopoly houses. Big, enormous, well-built structures. Ortley Beach, a little bit bigger than Ocean Beach as far as dwellings go, almost completely wiped off the map. And I was down there in April, and it really hasn't changed very much, which is really, really sad. So in a sense, Ocean Beach was actually lucky. But this is how most of them collapsed. This is on the ocean front. The collapse, that kind of reminds me of like some kind of prehistoric animal that's dying or something. It's these really strange shapes that they're in and whatnot. So 90% of these along the ocean front were completely destroyed and would have to be demolished. And on the bay side, the problem was standing water, that you would have so much mold and standing water and appliances and furniture ruined that had to basically get rid of them as well and just tear them down. And my first reaction when this happened was that I don't want to document this. My book is ready. I loved it the way it was. I never really liked natural disaster photographs. It's always these enormous amounts of debris. And sometimes whether you look at a tornado disaster in Oklahoma or Texas, they kind of look similar. And I just never liked it. My voice is much more orderly and graphic. So that was one concern. I didn't want it to be too documentary and look like it was also made from another photographer. So I said up front that I'm not going to document this. But over time, I couldn't get there for 2 months because it was closed off. And during those 2 months, I changed my mind. I got curious. I also started understanding better the historical implication here and how big this really was. And I decided that I have to go down and take a look at it. But I don't want it in the book. Maybe it will be a follow-up book, we'll see. One thing that I started doing only now is I started including the beach and the ocean, like in this case, and it started feeling appropriate because the sand and the water is what did most of the damage. It wasn't the wind. It was high tide, and it was the ocean and the sand that did most of this damage. So it felt appropriate now to include the ocean and the beach in the work. And a lot of the debris from the streets were already gone by the time I got there, so that kind of helped me along as well, I have to say. And I was able to start finding these more graphic and quiet scenes that fits my eye. And the major difference between the post-storm work is the color palette. It's very different. This is all earth tones. The color palette before the storm is all pastel colors. So the palette is very different. This is also photographed about a third of a stop darker. I didn't want to contrast it too much to go too crazy, but it felt appropriate to go about a third of a stop darker. Now, personally, I had so enjoyed the work process at Ocean Beach. I could walk a whole day there from October through April when nobody lives there and have the place all to myself without seeing a single person. And I loved that. I had complete full access. And I would only go midweek, so most people are working. Now, when I went down, there were work crews, utility crews, construction companies, cottage owners, curious people in general, and the cops patrolling. So it was really hard to get in a lot of these cottages because you would have been arrested for looting. I got stopped by the cops twice. I told them, I know it's private land, but I have permission. And they said, we don't care. And I was like, you know what? It's the end of the day. I'm done. I'm not going to get into it. I'm going to get one free pass. I'm going to save that for another day. So I just moved on. But that part of the process was now gone. And that was kind of sad. And it really made the whole project feel very different. It was now also changing so incredibly quickly that I started going down so much more often than I had before the storm, because then I kind of knew this is going to be here forever, I can do it whenever. But now things really started changing quickly. I took a lot of risks in the beginning, you know, the adrenaline's flowing, you got to get the shot, you see other people taking the same shot as you, it becomes like, hey, you know what, I got to get a better shot than that. And I started crawling into a lot of these semi-collapsed houses, you know, which was kind of creepy. There's shards of glass, there's nails, there's all kinds of debris, and it's a miracle I didn't even get any damage, physical damage whatsoever, actually. But the temporariness, too, is something that I love. Like this mound is a mound of sand behind this cottage that was sand they removed from the streets and back to the beach, and someone just happened to put the American flag up there, and I thought it really just made the photograph, and the next day I went back and it was gone. So that's how fast things were changing. So it was important for me to be there, you know, as much as possible. Same with this. This is one of the probably more known photographs from this project. I'd photographed this 3 times. The first time, this lighthouse was not there. The second, and I didn't put it there, I swear. The post-storm, there's nothing conceptual. I haven't touched anything, I swear. The second time I come down, the lighthouse is there, and I was like, again, thank you. I had a nice photograph, but forget that. This is the photograph. The third time, I'm curious. I want to see if it's still there. Have they put something else there? It's gone. And this is how it went on. And I became, again, a little obsessed like I do with things when I get really, really excited. I mentioned colors. Colors are lost. This is one of the very few that actually has color in them from the post-storm. There's one other interior that has a lot of colors, but color, it kind of metaphorically makes sense in a way. Color is man-made, is man-applied. You know, nature takes back, color disappear. It kind of goes back to an earth tone. So it kind of made sense to me. And when I started feeling all these things, I was like, you know what? This should be in the book. And now I realize that it's too important not to be in the book, historically, and for other reasons as well. And this is another one that I crawled into that wasn't the smartest decision probably. But we decided in the book, let's have the post-storm work in a separate section, separate introduction, and we'll also make it a little bit smaller. So I didn't want it to take away from the older work. Just a couple of more photos left. These I was able to do because they put up these temporary floodlights, and I really wanted to capture this, but only I don't really like night photography unless I can make the sky completely black. So I went down, and I must have been sick the week that we did astronomy in school because I didn't realize that the sun comes up in the east. I mean, the moon. Did you guys know that? Same as the sun. I didn't know that. So I had moon interference. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm here now, an hour after sunset, and the moon is up, and it's completely ruining my photograph. So I had to come back and photograph it instead in the middle of the night, like 3 hours before sunrise, to get the photograph that I wanted. It was very creepy. It was cold as hell. I was worried about cops patrolling. It was dark. You heard weird sounds everywhere. The ocean is very close. I can hear it. And a really creepy thing too, this is months after, the smoke alarms going off everywhere. No one turned off the smoke alarms. So it was a really, really creepy situation that I did not enjoy. Now I enjoy the photographs, but I did not enjoy getting them. And I wanted to counter this completely black with the complete opposite. I wanted to be positive and negative. So I went down and I would do these at sunrise in the same direction, and now the sun is hidden behind the cottage, and I would just overexpose it by 3 stops to just completely blow out the sky. Not just the light in the sky, but also the color in the sky. Completely blow it out and still get good detail in the front here. So these are kind of a sub-series of diptychs actually with black and white, positive and negative part of the project. And the last kind of photograph, this is the closing photograph in the book. It's from the John Waite song. I actually recently only learned it's the John Waite song. For me, it will always be a Bruce Springsteen song. What do you think, John, from Jersey? Springsteen, absolutely. I love the Springsteen version. Anyway, the Jersey Girl. This was put up after the storm, down the shore, everything's all right. So I thought that was a very appropriate way to finish the book with. But it shows you, when you do take that time, how this project went about. It started as a landscape study, added interiors, added a conceptual layer to the interiors, and then added the post-storm as well. And you can kind of metaphorically, not that I really do it, but look at it as a study of man's relationship with nature. This is probably a place where homes should not be built. Similar to when we had this huge mud collapse recently. They had reports that said you should not be building houses here because of mudslides. But people are greedy, the view is nice, and we take chances, and every now and then you pay for it. So that's what happened. So that's pretty much it.
I was wondering if you're continuing to shoot as the area is either being completely torn down or rebuilt?
Oh, very good question. I actually have a few more. Let me show you. I didn't plant that question. But let me tell you, when I worked in the corporate world, I would always plant questions. But I didn't do it. Chuck? I didn't do it with Chuck. But good, thank you. Yes, because I had promised on Facebook that I would show some previously unpublished photographs of what it looks like now. This is after the book was made and part of the reconstruction. How goofy does this house look? That's going to be a staircase going up to this house eventually. All the houses on the ocean now in the bayside the new ones have been elevated, but even the old ones, they put these metal rods through the house and basically lifts it up, and it looks like a Jenga puzzle. It's crazy. This is on the bayside. This boat basin floods no matter what. This is another interior that hasn't been demolished yet. But I love the game there. It says something about, can't read it from here. Worst case scenario, yeah. It's kind of, I didn't put that there either. I swear. But whoever did, thank you very much. The right side here is the ocean side, and you see there's one cottage there in construction, and the rest is pretty much empty. And this is how it looked after the demolition and the beginning of the reconstruction. So Chuck, to answer your question, I pretty much covered the demolition and the beginning of the construction. Then the book came out, and obsessive as I am, I can't stop going. I've been back 6 times since the book came out, and the last time was in April. And since I don't photograph in the summer, come this fall, I'll be back there again. I didn't want to photograph the new interiors because I know they're probably going to be generic and look more like a city apartment, but I have some interesting ideas for them actually, so we'll see. Something I learned too is how incredibly destructive weeds can look. I didn't realize that. I never photographed weeds. I told you I don't like green stuff. I don't like weeds and bushes and trees and grass. Photographically, I love to run on it and that kind of stuff, but not photographically. But there's never weed down here, but when you see it like this, it just so incredibly added to the destructive feel of what happened. And this is now how the ocean front looks. It's incredible how fast this has come together. And this is very ironic. Has anyone seen a movie called Betty Blue? Okay. My all-time favorite movie. It's fantastic. It's on Hulu Plus. It's called Betty Blue. The first part of the book takes place in, they call them bungalows, similar to this, in France. It's hot as hell. You don't see the beach. You don't see the ocean. It's all sand, and they're painting these bungalows in pinks and blues. And it's like full circle for me seeing these now being elevated on stilts, just like it was in that movie. And that's also a good movie recommendation that I stand for, definitely. Betty Blue. I wanted to just show a few more also of what it actually looks like with people at Ocean Beach. I promised to do that as well, just 5, because it is after all built for people. So this is what it looks like in the early morning usually. People fishing, walking on the beach. It's a family resort. 5 miles down is Seaside Heights and Snooki and all those people hanging out, right? And this is like family central. And I always loved that part. And I always went before the high season when the Dairy Queen is only open on weekends and it's quiet and it's not too hot yet. And something about that solitude and quietness again that I really seek. I only photographed this because I thought it was the most patriotic bathing suit on 4th of July, without a doubt. And I looked really hard, but she was a clear winner. Now, it would have been really cool if that was her Harley standing there too, I have to say. It has a surf scene, which I didn't realize either till I was there the last time. 2011, me and my wife stayed there when she was pregnant. In the late afternoons on the south side of Ocean Beach, these surfers come out and hit the waves. And this is the fireworks from 4th of July, which they have. It's illegal, but the cops let them do it every year. I only experienced it once, and it was a wonderful experience. All these families are sitting on the beach and playing games, throwing balls till it gets dark, and then everyone does their own. It's not done by the town or the city. Everyone brings their own fireworks and shoots it off from down the water's edge, and it's a really, really wonderful time. And this is maybe one photo I regret not putting in the book, I have to say, possibly. But Chuck, to answer your question, yes, I've been back. I'm more curious than anything. If I do anything more, I think I need to get a sponsor financially, grant fellowship, something of that nature, because the first project has cost me so much money that. And now with a baby, every time you leave, $15 an hour babysitting in Brooklyn, it's kind of tough. But I would like to do something with it, possibly, yes.
How much input did you have in laying out your book? And also, if you did have input, how did you choose the size of your book?
Good question. I had a lot of input. It was pretty much down to me. I would send over the photographs that I wanted them to consider, which was about 250% more than we needed in the book. I would tell them these 40 must be in the book. And out of these 40, I would like to see half of these paired together as such. And then I would also explain, and these are important to be far up in the book. So I probably gave them about 40% of the layout strategically. Then they went to work, came back, and after that, we changed very little. The book was supposed to be a little bit bigger originally, but I had some serious problems raising the money from my Indigo campaign, which you all know you have to have money these days to publish a book with a good publisher. So at first we didn't know what to do, so we said, okay, there's one way we can do this. We can make the size a little bit smaller, which I didn't mind because it kind of feels intimate and appropriate because these dwellings are so small. It's also my first book, and it was more important for me to get it out there. We made it 4 pages shorter, which wasn't the end of the world. And then we made some, financial sacrifices on both sides and whatnot to get it out there. But that's how we came up with the size. It was supposed to be a little bit bigger, ended up like this. I really love the size. The only time I don't is when I see it in the bookstore next to some of these enormous books, unless it's presented, not that I get size envy, but if it's not presented on the table or where you can see the cover, it's kind of hard to find it sometimes. And I've also noticed that some bookstores are misfiling it under the letter J instead of LJ. So that's something, if I can't find it in the store under L, I usually look under J, and half the time or so, I can find it there.
Douglas, it's been fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.